Hey everyone, what's going on? Jeff here from Films at Home, and today I am back with another 4K Ultra HD review. Today we're going to be diving into a Criterion versus Kino Lorber head-to-head battle. We are looking at The Great Escape, which is now available on 4K from Kino Lorber, but was also previously available as part of the Criterion Collection on 1080p Blu-ray, but with a 4K scan. So this is going to be a very interesting head-to-head. I will have some comparisons for you, and we'll talk about the differences and whether or not you should be upgrading to 4K. Now, before we get started, if you're enjoying 4K reviews like this, or you like physical media, Blu-ray, DVD collecting, any of that stuff, please consider subscribing to the channel. Really close to 100K, and that's our goal for 2022. So help us reach that goal, hit the subscribe button, and I'd really appreciate it. Now let's jump right into the review. So The Great Escape here on 4K from Kino Lorber is another one in a line of Kino Lorber 4K titles where they've been kind of scooping up some other boutique labels Blu-rays and upgrading to 4K. So we saw them do this with Silence of the Lambs on 4K. We saw them do this with Misery, which was a Scream Factory Blu-ray collector's edition that they released on 4K. And they're also scooping up some stuff like Some Like It Hut, as well as many other classic 4K. So Kino has been going really hard in the 4K game, especially when it comes to older catalog titles, and it does seem like specifically a lot of MGM stuff. So I won't talk much about the movie. This review is about the disc and the 4K visuals and audio and all the things that go into the home theater presentation. But I do have to say, if you haven't seen The Great Escape, it is one of the greatest movies I think that's ever been made, one of the greatest war movies, and it is one of Quentin Tarantino's favorite movies, maybe his favorite movie. I think he has said that in past interviews. So if you like his work, Inglourious Bastards, if you liked what he did with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where he actually inserted Leonardo DiCaprio into some scenes in The Great Escape as sort of an inside, joke in the movie, you'll probably like this. This is going to be up your alley. It's one of the best classic movies ever made, and it's an absolute who's who of Hollywood with the cast. Steve McQueen, James Gardner, and Richard Attenborough lead the cast, but it also has James Donald, Charles Bronson, Donald Pleasance, and James Coburn. So it's a huge who's who of Hollywood at the time, and even some actors who were sort of on the up and up at this time. So an overall great movie, and one that you definitely need to see. Now, you have to see the movie, but the question is, do you need to see it in 4K, or are you going to be okay with your Criterion Collection Blu-ray? And I did have the Criterion Collection Blu-ray as well as the previous MGM Blu-ray release. So I had two comparison points here. I ended up selling the Criterion Collection Blu-ray and traded in the MGM Blu-ray, because after watching this, I did think the 4K was the best presentation. Although I will say, this 4K disc, it's not perfect. Now, the Criterion Blu-ray had that 4K scan, but it was downsampled to 1080p. So with a good upscaler and a good TV, you could probably get a pretty good picture close to 4K quality. But nothing truly beats true 4K with 4K scanned, especially when it comes to film grain and 35mm, which this movie of course is, and it looks so much cleaner on 4K. A lot of the detail is brought forward. There's a lot more depth. The film grain resolves a little bit more nicely. If you don't like film grain, it's always best to go to 4K. Those added resolution, the added pixels, that's always going to help sort of smooth that film grain out, make it more consistent and less obvious. So if you don't like it, you'll notice it less. If you do like it, it's still definitely there and definitely faithful to the source. It hasn't been scrubbed, but it is a much cleaner image. So anytime you can get a true 4K scan like this of an older movie, it's usually a very good thing. Now, my issue with The Great Escape on 4K is the color grading that was done by Kino Lorber and some of their box art here, which is kind of confusing. Oh, first off, if you look at the box on the back of the slipcover, it does say Dolby Vision down the bottom, but that's not in fact true. This release doesn't have Dolby Vision. In fact, it doesn't have HDR of any sort, which has been one sort of annoying thing when it comes to Kino's 4K releases. They did this with The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly as well. They just haven't been including HDR on some of these, which I guess is sort of hit or miss. It definitely adds more depth, and these older movies benefit from it. So I would like to see them continue to add it, and it is definitely confusing when you have the slipcover saying Dolby Vision, which is not there. Now, the color grading on this is also much closer to the MGM Blu-ray Blu-ray than it is the Criterion Collection Blu-ray. So the MGM Blu-ray was a little bit more bluish gray, green, olive colored. The Criterion Collection Blu-ray is much brighter. It's more yellows, it's more brightness, it's a little bit more saturation, and they turned off a little bit of this kind of blue-green filter that you saw on the first Blu-ray release. And Kino has gone back to that sort of color grading for this release. Now, I have a feeling it's probably more faithful to the source because Kino does go back to the original studios and they do a work on transfers with people at MGM and try to make the most faithful representation of the movie versus Criterion, who will do their own transfers and their own restorations. So it may be more faithful, or at least more faithful to what MGM had on record, but I kind of prefer the Criterion Collection in a lot of scenes. There are definitely scenes in this which look better with the new color grading that Kino provides, and the 4K resolution probably helps that as well. But there were a lot of scenes where I thought it was almost too dark, it was too bluish gray, the tint was too much, and the Criterion Collection Blu-ray just looked a lot better to me in terms of color. It didn't quite get there in detail, but I preferred the color much more. I'd probably say it's about a 70-30 split. I prefer 70% of the scenes on Kino and about 30% of the scenes on Criterion with the color, which is why I did sell my Criterion Collection and I'm happy with the 4K, but it's definitely something you need to know. If you really liked the way the Criterion Collection color grading looked compared to older DVD or Blu-ray releases of The Great Escape, this reverts back to that, and so you may not like it in many cases, and that could be a reason why people prefer the Criterion Collection scan. So this one is going to come down to sort of your personal preference. Definitely take a look at screenshots online, use the comparisons I've put here to sort of make your judgment, but the best thing you can always do is just watch both discs and then decide to keep one and sell the other, because they're both going to have some resale value given their boutique releases of a very famous movie. So that's one option. That's sort of what I did. I sold my Criterion because I'm happy with Kino and that 4K detail gives it the step up, but I can definitely see where some people would enjoy Criterions and deal with 4K upscaling to get close to 4K resolution in a much better color in some of those scenes, or a much preferred color to certain viewers. So it's going to really come down to what you want to see with your copy, because these two are vastly different in that area. Now, in the audio side of things, this does have an original audio track mono, which is pretty good if you like the original mono tracks that come on older movies like this. They did include it here, so that's good for the purists, but it does also pack a 5.1 track, which personally for me, given it's a war movie and there's some action to be had here, it may not be the most pure to the source, but I really like the 5.1. I thought it was pretty well done. Maybe if you're a purist, you won't enjoy that, but at least you have both options, and if you do have 5.1, you can take advantage of it, and I thought they both sounded very good. Now for packaging here, we got this little slip cover with sort of like original poster art. They tend to do that with Kino. On the back, you've got your list of special features and things of that nature, and then on the inside, you just got the same artwork on your case, and then you've got the 4K disc and a Blu-ray special feature disc. So no Blu-ray feature disc here. That's not included. It's just the 4K movie, and the Blu-ray disc is for special features only. Now, the special features on this are primarily the same that were on the MGM Blu-ray, but they do have a new audio commentary by filmmaker historian Steve Mitchell and Combat Films American Realism author Stephen J. Rubin, which is kind of a nice addition. An additional commentary track is always cool, but the rest of the stuff is kind of just archival footage, stuff that's been around for a while, special features. You've got, trailers, a couple different featurettes on bringing fact to fiction, The Flight to Freedom, a standing ovation, a documentary about The Great Escape, The Untold Story, some additional interviews, typical stuff we've seen on past releases, so not a whole lot there that's new. This is one area that differs from the Criterion. The Criterion did have some additional special features and some different features for this title. So if that's something you're looking for, you can definitely hold on to your Criterion if you want to keep those in your collection. And packaging is sort of going to be down to your personal preference. You know, The Great Escape Criterion had really nice packaging. This is pretty good too. It's going to come down to what you like for artwork, but that's sort of subjective, and I don't think it really is going to sway you in one way or another. The reason you may stick with your Criterion versus Kino is because you're a Criterion Collection person versus a Kino Lorber person. I know they're out there. People have loyalties. So that could be a major reason why you don't feel like you want to upgrade. But I have to say, if you want the best presentation and the best experience that this movie has ever had on home video, this 4K from Kino is it. It's a step up over the Criterion with that true 4K. 4K resolution really helps the detail, especially with these 35mm movies shot on film. It's such a game changer. And although I didn't love some of the color grading changes and choices that Kino made versus what Criterion had done, overall, in the scheme of things, I think that is less important and less distracting than some of the softer shots you'll get on the 1080p Blu-ray. So I do think it is worth upgrading, and it is one that you should definitely add to your collection. And another really great release from Kino Lorber, even going head to head with Criterion. They have been holding their own and in many cases winning that battle. So I have to give them props for the great 4K work they've done here in late 2021 and early 2022. And I'm really looking forward to what they have coming next. So if you want to pick up The Great Escape on 4K, there'll be a link down in the description to Amazon. That helps support my channel, so I'd really appreciate if you use that link. That means a lot to me. Also, make sure you're subscribed, have your notifications on, and make sure you follow me on social media, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. All the links are down in the description, as well as a ton of other ways that you can support my channel with different partners. So check out the video description, check out all the different links. If you can support, that's great, but the best thing you can do is subscribe and watch these videos. So I really appreciate all your support in watching these and letting me catch up on some 4K reviews, because I know I've been behind. This came out a couple weeks ago, but there's some really good stuff coming out on 4K. It's been kind of a slow January, but February and March and April have some absolutely amazing titles for 4K, especially catalog stuff. So lots more 4K reviews to come for you all, so stay tuned for that. Otherwise, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Stay safe and stay healthy out there. Take care of yourselves, and I will talk to you soon.